Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time. Let's see who's all here. 38 people on a slightly cloudy, slightly rainy day. Maybe people are just getting their cuppa, as the English say. Anyhow, welcome back. I had a very nice and easeful day yesterday. Only 3 live streams. But with the retreat over, tried to take some time yesterday to not be too ambitious and just give myself a chance to relax a little bit and spend some time in the forest. Just curious thing, when we're engaged in something, and there's a sense of duty and investment, it's easy to kind of not really feel how much energy one's putting out sometimes, especially when it's all good stuff and exciting. And I have this experience over and over again in my life where something ends and then a short time after, like a couple hours or something, as things get cleaned up and you start to unwind and people go home, or you just sit down without anything immediately pressing on you, you fall into a mild state of exhaustion and you realize how tired you've been and how much energy you've been putting into something. And I had that experience Sunday night after the retreat. I mean, it was Mother's Day and the last day of the retreat, and there was extra things going on. And Sunday night, I felt very tired, even before the evening meditation. But I was yawning as soon as that finished. At what was it, 8 in the evening? So, and then yesterday I had a fairly full morning, taking care of monastery things, and a bit of a break in the afternoon. Usually by the time it gets to noon, I've been up and either practicing or working for 8+ hours. So, like many of the monks, I often take a bit of a break midday, and I think it's a healthy habit to learn how to nap and refresh oneself, even short naps. You need to know your own energy, though. Some people don't benefit from napping so much. Some short naps are very beneficial if you don't fall into too deep of a sleep. And for others, giving themselves a good hour or so rest is very useful. So I did that in the early afternoon with the thought I'd be back at it, taking care of business in the afternoon. And after I woke up, I was going to wait for my last cup of coffee of the day, but the mind wasn't feeling very energetic. So I went for the coffee, and then with the thought to do a bit of a walking meditation outside. It was forecast to start raining yesterday, but it hadn't yet started to rain. It was beautiful. And the bird life here at the Hermitage right now is just wonderful. We're kind of getting to the stage where the robins are dominating the whole scene here. They've chased most of the blue jays away. Wild turkeys kind of come and go, as do a variety of other birds. But if you can't get along with the robins, then being at the Hermitage right now is not a very comfortable place to be if you're a bird. And yeah, my energy never really completely came back to me, so I ended up spending just a couple hours walking about and sitting outside of my hut, watching the bird life and shooting a couple little video clips of the wind animating the leaves of the ginkgo tree and the ornamental maples, and it was nice. It was nice just to have a couple hours where you're not practicing and not pushing yourself. And by 3 o'clock, I relinquished any ambitions I had for the day. I thought, this is good. And I had a tea time arranged with one of the other monks to catch up with them, and then evening meditation at 6. And I thought, that'd be a good day right there. So, and then the rain did come a little later in the evening, and we had a little bit this morning as well. I don't know if I can show this. There's a few nests right around my hut, and there's a beautiful little nest in this tree just outside of my window where a robin is raising 4 or 5 chicks. And part of what I was doing was watching how hard she has to work to feed these guys. She's out. I saw her grabbing these large black ants and different insects and worms and whatnot, and flying in and feeding these little guys. And let's see if the technology works here and I can show this. Oh, yeah, there it is. I might need to move it somehow. These are these precious little guys she's feeding outside my window. And at this point, they have proportionally huge eyeballs, big beaks, and pink fuzzy little bodies. You have to watch it for quite a while to actually see how many are in there. And there's another video that's not quite as good where they jostle each other enough that they all have to adjust their sleeping position, and they rear their heads and open their beaks a little bit. Precious little things. I don't know if I can show that one. I think it's this one here. Yeah. It's not playing. Too much streaming. Anyways. Cute little things. So I was watching the stream this morning, and I noticed people talking about the weather. And I mentioned this the other day. It's something of a curiosity how it is that we can't stop talking about the weather. And just this morning in our meditation, it started to rain a little bit, and I started thinking, oh, nice, it's raining. And then immediately I started imagining the morning coffee time here, and then when I logged in, everyone was talking about the weather, and the thought came to my mind: am I being Pollyannish? Like, some days I'm delighting in the fact that it's warm and sunny and we're moving into the fullness of spring. And here today, I'm being all excited about a nice spring rain. I think we need it. But it's sincere, and I don't think I'm being Pollyannish. I've come to appreciate the rain and the seasons, and I see Tamira is here with us today, and she definitely can't stop talking about the weather. For those who don't know Tamira, she's a friend of ours that lives here in the gorge, and is she's many things, but she's also local weather forecaster. So, and has an amazing blog. So, yeah, and you're making a good point, Tamira. It's a good way to start a connection with just about anyone, because we all share this condition of living on this earth and in the environment we have, and there's certain vulnerability we have to environment and the weather in particular. Especially some of my friends here in the gorge, they're so immersed, and such a big part of their life is life here in the gorge is surfing and running and biking and spending time in the great outdoors. And it's such a magnificent corner of the world. If you want to spend a good portion of your life outside, there's not many better places. But you do see like how even that becomes a source of suffering for people. It's kind of the flip side of sensuality, which we talk about oftentimes. We create a dependency on it. And we had some interesting discussions around the role that Vedana plays. Pleasant and painful, so pleasant weather, painful weather. Such things exist. And over my life, I've developed a certain equanimity. I'm not all that invested in the weather being a particular way. It's quite nice to see it, the seasons. It's quite nice to appreciate how beyond our control it is. The thing I find so funny about our yoking desire and like and dislike to the weather is I think it's like it's so far beyond humans' ability to control, either collectively or certainly personally. And yet it's the most common thing. We have a certain amount of expectation, like, dislike, hoping, wishing, and wanting bound up with the weather. How many times do we catch ourselves saying, I hope it warms up soon, or I hope we get some rain, or I hope the summer's not too hot. And on one level, it's the most common human sentiment or expression, but like on the wisdom level, it's kind of crazy. Like, what is it about you that thinks the weather cares? What it is that is convenient for you or your friends or your neighbors, or you're wishing or wanting. And I have seen that change in myself over the years. Like, I've just developed an appreciation, acceptance, equanimity. One of Ajahn Chah's disciples, Lumpur Jan, who I met and knew briefly as I was a young monk, but he passed away fairly early. He had this saying that many of his disciples repeated over and over again, which is, that's good too. Which I really like. It's kind of a wonderful way to shift the mind back towards equanimity, acceptance, especially when we meet the unexpected, the unwished for, the unwanted, something that's disagreeable. In Thai, say "di mungan," which means good as well, or good too. Di mungan. And it's actually something that we do quite well as human beings. What's his name? There's a researcher, a happiness researcher. Such things exist, which is kind of a wonderful thing in it itself. Who talks about natural happiness and synthetic happiness. Oh, I can't remember his name. He's a wonderful speaker too. And natural happiness is that which is naturally pleasant. It stimulates pleasant sensations. And life is full of such things. Even for the most equanimous, even for a Buddha, even for the enlightened. But synthetic happiness is that part of the mind that is able to be happy with what is, that which is. Yes, Alexander, you've got it. I'm talking about Dan Gilbert. Thank you. I was having a mental block. So synthetic happiness, that's the happiness that we make or we create, and largely it's through the storytelling nature of our minds. You go to buy a new car and you really wanted the red one and they didn't have it, or they had a special deal on the black one, and you're so eager to get your new car that even though you really wanted the red one, you buy the black one. And right away your mind, like even before you make the purchase, your mind kind of goes into production, trying to create as much happiness as it can, even though you didn't get what you wanted. It starts thinking about, well, a black one's a little better, or I did want the red one, but I can get the black one now, or they gave me a deal, or you find some way to create a story to convince yourself that you're happy. And they've studied, Dan Gilbert and many other happiness researchers have studied the psychology of this. And it's really interesting and kind of positive aspect of human psychology, that we seem to have some sort of natural happiness immune system. And they've done research, like there is almost no tragedy or no great blessing that can hit your life that shifts your average level of happiness for very long. I think it's something about, usually within a year, you're back to baseline. And I remember seeing a talk of Dan Gilbert's many years ago where he gives some striking examples. People sort of being in an accident and becoming quadriplegic, and you would think it would be the end. Our prediction mechanisms, if we consider that for ourselves or our loved ones, are not all that accurate. I think that would be the worst, and maybe I'd never survive that. Maybe I'd never have happiness again. And yet people do, on the whole. So we have some sort of balancing mechanisms in there. And as practitioners, it's interesting to sort of note these things. The way Ajahn Chah talked about something along these lines is sensitizing oneself to the whole dimension of liking and disliking. And it's also related to some of his injunctions to really become a student of our moods. Like, it's, we don't maybe think about this all the time, but liking something is a mood. Disliking something is a mood. It's not merely a discursive judgment in the mind. There's a whole hedonic, whole body and mind experience that comes with like and dislike. And Ajahn Chah said in a very kind of striking way one time, if you haven't learned to rise above your moods or rise above like and dislike, you haven't even yet begun to practice. And that's a pretty strong teaching, because this being students of Vedana, students of feeling and feeling affect, we know how intrinsic those feelings of like and dislike come based on our connection to the sense realm, and just how natural it is for us to gravitate and orient ourselves to trying to maximize pleasant Vedana, pleasant contact, and minimize negative contact, our dukkha vedana. And that is the roller coaster of samsara. So this is a bit of a meandering kind of reflection this morning, but it's all kicked off by my liking the rain, and once again pondering our obsession with the weather. I do have a sense of confidence in my practice is working, if if slowly, it's working, because as I mature, I seem better able to like it all. Every season, all the weather, it all belongs. And it's not worth suffering over. So, and it's interesting living in the forest, a little bit closer to nature than maybe many people live these days. How you can have like mudita for the ecosystem and for the animals as we roll through the seasons and as the weather comes and goes and plays its role. On some level, it's all good. It all belongs. And so much of the dislike of the weather isn't just the discomfort. It's bound up with self. Self is always implicated in this experience of creating dukkha. Usually we don't like the weather because it's frustrating our desires or it's inconvenient. I was going to go skiing today. I was hoping the wind was going to blow like it was forecast so that I can go surfing today. Or I really wanted to work in the garden today. Or, so much of our liking and disliking is just bound up with all these strategies we have for happiness and our preferences. And a lot of that is really the arrogance of the self. Like, really? Why should the globe? Because weather is global. It feels local, but it's global. Why should the globe rearrange itself to fit your desires? It's kind of crazy. So, anyhow, that's a bit of a reflection for people this morning. Good to see so many people in here. It looks like people got their coffee and decided to join afterward. Oh, it's a good crowd. I see lots of good comments in here too, so I like that. It's good if people can remind me of the things I've forgotten, like Dan Gilmer and the hedonic treadmill. Whoops. Sorry about that, Dinka. Clicked on the wrong comment. But yes, hedonic adaptation and the hedonic treadmill for people who want to research this a little bit more. But you don't have to get that fancy. If you investigate dukkha and investigate the self, investigate liking and disliking, you'll learn everything you need to know. You don't necessarily need to go to Harvard, although it's wonderful we have people like that too. So we have a few more minutes if anyone has any reflections to share or questions. I see Charles, who was on our retreat, and it's got a nice icon there. Looks like sitting meditation in a cave in the southwest. My practice has significantly deepened and become more continuous since the retreat in a very good way. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I've seen people. So many of the reflections I got from people is similar to my reflection on energy. They had kind of slipped into a very habitual place with their practice, and the retreat that we had with Ajahn Sona shook them out of their routine and kind of reinvigorated their practice in various ways. And that is part of the benefit of taking a concerted time out to go on retreat. And then you want to build on that, like reflect on Charles and everyone. You want to reflect on that. It's okay to take an afternoon off to kind of catch your breath. But part of the challenge of living in such an impermanent and ephemeral world is these good conditions that we have and that we create. They aren't yet solid and secure. And so one has to follow up, and the Buddha's thoughts on how it is that we most effectively engage in our spiritual path is right effort. And not only are good conditions to be sought after, they're to be guarded, nurtured, developed, deepened. And the causes and conditions for an increase in those wholesome states of mind, skillful states of mind, is to be pursued. So build on the strength of heart and the strength of your practice that the retreat might have helped inject, because things are fragile and uncertain. So there's, one good thing is just to take one, like look for one positive change or takeaway from the retreat. Like, so some people found the chanting useful. Maybe based on that, make some commitment to yourself to continue to working and practicing with that. So, or it might be a little increase in doing a particular practice, like going through the Satipatthana. Ajahn refreshed our minds about many of the different aspects of practicing sati. And I'm sure for some, there was his explanation, simplification, and the way he framed the practice gives it a new sense of purpose and a place in the whole of the Eightfold Path. So even if you're not doing anything much differently, like say you're spend a certain amount of time doing metta bhavana or anapanasati or something, just having refreshed that kind of context of how it fits into the path in and of itself is a very beneficial sort of thing. Just as I've said before, just the habit of practicing is good, but there has to be this sincere and alive curiosity and investigation of Dhamma kind of going on. And so like that frame of the Satipatthana and how that fits in the bigger project of unraveling dukkha, understanding dukkha, is really beneficial. And that will fade very quickly. So following up on that's good. So let's see, we have a couple more minutes here. So one follow-up from Charles: I've been working hard to integrate the practice of my daily work schedule. Deal? I think it's almost impossible to harvest any fruits with next to no practice in terms of the time input. And Linda: even outside the retreat, the daily morning, evening puja, this coffee time has been beneficial and strongly inclining the mind to a wholesome way and a integrating practice in daily life. That's good. Yeah, we got a lot of feedback from people that the experiment of practicing at home, while challenging, had maybe an extra added benefit of like learning how to integrate the practice into their daily life and some of the other duties. Charles, I still haven't got back to your email on this, but this is interesting. He's opening a yoga class tomorrow with a piece from the retreat. So Charles wrote a couple really beautiful poems that were inspired by the retreat. So, and Phil from Hood River, the retreat helped me see how much work I still need to do around my subtle judgments of other people. That's a tricky one, Phil. Judgment comes so easily. One bit of advice from Ajahn Chah is he said, for a practitioner, they should give 90% of their attention to focusing on themselves. And I think in some sense he means judging yourself, discerning what's going on with yourself, and only 10 or 5% for other people. Because it's such a strong habit we have, looking outside of ourselves and judging people. I sometimes marvel at just, I'll be watching over my mind and either thinking of somebody or in the presence of somebody. And sometimes there's a certain objectivity and equanimity, and you can just watch these processes of judging, and it's just astounding, like the stuff that comes up. And there's a part of the mind that's thinking, it's looking kind of askance or skeptically. They're thinking, why do you have to generate that kind of stuff? Like, why can't you just let that person be as they are? Why do you have to keep assessing like good and evil, or what you like or what you dislike, or what you approve of, what you disapprove of, or picking on their faults, or using them as some sort of reference for the self. You assess that they're superior or inferior or the same as you in some way. Okay, well, we've come to the end for today. It's 8:30 now, so good to see everyone, and we'll have some fresh reflections tomorrow morning with a fresh cup of coffee. I've got a few thoughts of some places to go this week. The retreat provided a very nice, kind of easy focus, but been thinking a little bit about sticking with the five hermitages a little bit, and some of the imagery and analysis, or imagery and similes that we find in the suttas. Maybe revisiting those a little bit, maybe even reading little bits of them and discussing with people. I still like this idea of coming up with alternative translations for some of these terms. In particular, the first hindrance, sense desire. So anyways, thank you all. Have a good day. Whatever the weather's like, rain, sun, cloud, be at ease with it. And we'll see you all tomorrow morning. Be well.